Hello and welcome to Mustang News. I'm Connor McCarthy. With the last day to register to vote within 5 days, ASI hosted a mayoral debate in the University Union today. Here's a recap of that debate.
So first of all, thank you to ASI for inviting us here today. I think this is so important that we all get involved in the democratic process. And I'm a Cal Poly graduate, and I've lived here since I was your age, and have been really proud of the work that we've done together in the last couple of years since I've been mayor. When I ran last time, I made a commitment to you to work on more relationships and less ordinances. And that's exactly what we've done. We've listened to you on not expanding the safety enhancement zone around St. Patrick's Day. We've listened to you on lighting. We tripled our budget on lighting around campus. And I'm proud to say that just today it was announced that we have reduced our noise complaints. We have a historical low on noise complaints and a historical September.
Time is up.
Oh, sorry.
Nope.
Yeah.
Totally
Okay.
good.
Thanks.
Roman's back there.
Okay, sorry. I'll keep my eye on him.
Okay, well, I'm Keith Gurnee, and my distinguishing characteristic was I was the first and last Cal Poly student ever elected to City Council. I served for almost 7 years on the City Council. And like then, students were woefully underrepresented in our city government. And I, again, want to change that. I'm hoping that we can generate some interest in the audience here and on campus to get students to help serve in local government. And I would like to see each of the some 16, 17 committees we have become members of one of those committees.
Thank you. Alrighty, we are now going to jump into our questioning portion. So as a reminder, you have a minute and a half to respond to the questions, and then there will be a 30-second rebuttal period.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So are you saying that we're going to take turns answering first?
Yes.
And then, okay, so we each won't get a minute and a half to answer. Sometimes we'll be answering a minute and a half, and sometimes we'll be rebutting.
So I'll ask a question, and you'll have a minute and a half to respond, and then you'll have a minute and a half to respond, and then 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, absolutely. Alrighty, our first question. What does a better San Luis Obispo look like, and what will you do to make our city a better place? Starting with Ms. Harmon, please.
I think a better San Luis Obispo is a more inclusive San Luis Obispo. San Luis Obispo is one of the least affordable places to live in the United States, and it has one of the lowest diversities in the state of California. And those are two things that are of top of mind concern for me, and something that we've been trying to address. And as you might know, the lack of diversity on Cal Poly's campus is also top of mind, I know, for students. And so I think that we really need to work together to create a more inclusive city and a more inclusive campus, while we partner on a lot of other things between the campus and the community. And I know sometimes that there feels like a huge divide, and especially at times in our neighborhoods. And I think that we've come a long way in the last several years on those issues and have mended a lot of those relationships, but there's still a lot more work to do. And so we're moving towards being a net zero city. And so that's another part of how I see the future of San Luis Obispo, being a place where we are inviting technology, innovation, and students such as yourselves to be a part of the solutions to our changing climate.
Okay, a better city. I think a better city in San Luis Obispo is one that remains true to itself. We have a rich cultural history, a rich heritage in San Luis Obispo, a great small town character. And I think as we grow, we need to be respectful of that character. I also was involved in saving a lot of open space. I helped landowners preserve over 120,000 acres of permanent open space throughout the state, including the 4 transactions that led to the permanent preservation of Bishop Peak, which I assume some of you might hike up there every now and then. So I really want to see us bring back open space as a key priority and continue growing in character with our community rather than overwhelming it with 75-foot tall buildings in our downtown.
Excellent. Ms. Harmon, you have 30 seconds.
Sure. We are looking to have more density in the downtown. It makes for a more vital downtown. It's a big mistake that Santa Barbara's downtown has missed that opportunity, and you see the repercussions if you've had a chance to visit Santa Barbara. We want to get people closer to where they're working and closer to public transportation, and so we will be looking to potentially have more density in the downtown. But that density comes at a cost to developers of a lot of extra community benefits, so that's something that we're excited to see. And we continue to expand our open space. We've acquired hundreds of acres in the past several years, and that continues to be a priority.
Mr. Gurnee?
Okay, 75-foot tall buildings are 20 feet taller than the 2 hotels that are being built downtown. Those hotels were built on public parking lots without replacing the public parking, which is creating an acute parking shortage in the downtown, which is not a good recipe for the economic viability of our historic downtown. And I think we really need to be careful about how we develop in our downtown. Can it handle more density? Yes, but to 75 feet, I just don't see it.
Thank you. Our next question, how does your style of leadership separate you from your competition? Starting with Ms. Harmon.
Well, I think that I'm a very positive and constructive and solution-oriented person and a very proactive leader. So I've been on campus sometimes 5 times a week in classrooms, speaking at events and reaching out to a lot of students. I have several interns from Cal Poly, and so really trying to lift people up and younger people into leadership positions in the work that I'm doing. I have open office hours in the Hot House. As many of you know, it's a relationship between the city, the county, and the university. It's an innovation and entrepreneurial space, and that's been a really informing place for me to get to know some of you and what's going on in terms of entrepreneurship on campus and in the community. And I really listen to all the voices, and that doesn't mean that everybody always gets what they want, but it does mean that people get heard. And I think what's happened over the course of my tenure is that there's been a shift and there's been an expansion in the breadth and depth of voices that have a role at City Council and in our process. And so we've included a lot more people and a more diverse group of people in terms of our decision making in San Luis Obispo.
Thank you.
Okay, as a planner and urban designer, I was a creative problem solver who worked for local governments up and down the state of California. Whether it was redesigning Venice Beach and refurbishing it, or a vision plan for the Port of Los Angeles, or the award-winning Prince Memorial Greenway in downtown Santa Rosa, I was able to work with communities as a public facilitator and as an urban designer to help local governments solve their problems. I'm a creative problem solver is what I am, and I think that that's crucial to the future leadership of our community.
All right, thank you. Ms. Harmon, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Well, it's always a challenge to talk about another candidate in a way that is constructive, but also illuminates an aspect that I think is really important about the person that they are. And I do find it really concerning, again, when we are struggling with a lack of diversity and overt racism on campus, that my opponent has compared what is generally called NIMBYs, generally affluent white homeowners, to the so-called N-word, and to align those two groups together to suggest that affluent white people are as persecuted as people of color in this country is really concerning, and I think that shows a lack of leadership.
Wow. I apologize publicly for that unfortunate use of that word, and I apologize to Erica Stewart in particular. But as the signer and the writer of the so-called civility resolution, as my opponent supposedly was, I am getting nothing but incivility from that side of the campaign. It's just remarkable that my signs are being torn down. I'm being called different things.
Thank you, Mr. Gurnee. That is your time.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Moving into the next question. What do you believe are issues that are facing our student population in San Luis Obispo?
What is the question?
The question is, what do you believe are issues that are facing our student population in San Luis Obispo?
Well, first and foremost, the housing crisis. This new state law that came down on the Housing Accountability Act is taking away discretion from local communities in reviewing these development projects. The area up on Foothill Boulevard is being populated by these new developments that are following that state law. They're putting in a tiny fraction of affordable housing units that are undersized, 400, 500 square feet, and using height exceptions, density exceptions, and parking forgiveness to maximize high-end market rate housing for students. 2-bedroom apartment with each bedroom with a sheet down the middle of it and a bed on either side of that sheet, and they're renting it out for $1,400 a bed. That's $5,600 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Now, what does that say to all those absentee landlords who own property, some 70%, north of Foothill Boulevard? Jack your rents. Now, I think This is being exploitive not only of our neighborhoods and our community, but it's exploiting you. And I think you need to be aware of what's coming down with this kind of development. Thank you.
I think that definitely, as I've said, affordability is the top issue for this community, and I think for a lot of the students on this campus. And so that is something that as I've said, we're really trying to meaningfully address. As I'm sure you know, that while the vast majority of the Cal Poly population does come from affluent families, there are definitely many students, probably some of you in this room, that are struggling, and that we do have students that are living unhoused that are attending Cal Poly. And so we need to keep fighting for them to find a safe space for them to live while they're here in San Luis Obispo. And I also think transportation is something that students struggle with. And happily, we've had a huge increase in our bus ridership when Cal Poly started this year. I think it was 40% increase comparative to last year. And so this is something that we're really working on. We're partnering with Cal Poly. Cal Poly has stepped up and provided more funding for the buses. As you know, freshmen are not bringing cars on campus. And so we want to make sure that everyone, especially students that are living car-free, have safe and reliable public transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Gurnee. You have a 30-second rebuttal.
Sure. I was on the city council when we started the bus system. And there's been a lot of talk about bicycle infrastructure. And I think the highest priority piece of bicycle infrastructure we need is completing the rail trail along the railroad tracks, which is flat, involves minimum conflict with cars, and would provide direct access to Cal Poly from anywhere in the community. So I think putting the right priorities and also getting protected bike lanes on our arterial streets where accidents are happening or where a
Thank you,
student
Mr.
was
Gurnee.
killed.
That is your time. Ms. Harmon?
Thank you. Bike paths are definitely a top priority for our council. Multimodal transportation is one of our major city goals, and this is why we have moved forward on a Safe Routes to School project that will connect the downtown to Foothill Boulevard, and also connect over Foothill Boulevard to some of the other the grammar schools on the other side of the street. But we know that a lot of Cal Poly students do traverse that neighborhood, getting from the other side of town over here to the Cal Poly side of town. So that'll continue to be a priority.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question. How do you hope to achieve a more diverse, inclusive, and welcoming San Luis Obispo community?
Well, I guess I'll start that one. Again, you know, I'm not just looking for the vote of students. I want to work to empower you in this community. And I really feel students are woefully underrepresented in our local government. And I'd like to see students get active in this community, understand what our neighborhoods are and how they work, understand the issues that are facing our downtown, and become politically active. And I would welcome that opportunity to help you be empowered.
Thank you.
Two of the things that I'm the most proud of that we've done in my tenure as mayor are the decision to stop celebrating Columbus Day and instead celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, and we're the first council to have done that, and to honor the Chumash, the northern Chumash tribes in particular, on whose land we now sit. And we also declared San Luis Obispo City as a welcoming city, which is our words for sanctuary city status, which I know that my opponent has said is not his cup of tea. But we really wanted to make sure that undocumented students and people in general in our community feel safe and supported here, and that we will not use our local police force to pursue anyone based on their documentation status. And as I'm sure you know, a lot of those folks are students here on campus. So those are two things that we've actively done. In addition to, I've participated in a lot of events over the course of the last 2 years, and before that, before I was mayor, especially with students in marginalized groups, really trying to lift them up and connect them to community leaders in their fields of interest to make sure that they have the mentorship and have the support that they need with the community to feel welcomed here.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Gurnee. You have a 30-second rebuttal.
Yes, I want to have it very clear that I think the most important national issue we face is the need for comprehensive immigration reform. We desperately need to help the DACAs. We need to find a path to citizenship for those that are here. But we also need to have comprehensive immigration reform and secure borders. And I think that that's the right path rather than the sanctuary state and sanctuary city movements.
Thank you. Ms. Harmon?
I would just reiterate that I have a long track record of standing with students and community members in marginalized groups, and I would continue to do that. I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do on this issue. As I said, we have a really low diversity in our communities. It's really hard to turn that around. And so we need to continue to work together. I've been working with the administration over the past year on this, and it's a tough issue, and we have to have leadership that is really willing to have the courage to stand with people even when it's not popular.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon. Your time is up. Alrighty, thank you. Moving on to the next question. How do you believe the city should address food and housing insecurity? Starting with Ms. Harmon.
Well, I feel like we've addressed this to some extent, but I think one of the types of housing that we really need to look at that I think students would really resonate in particular are communal co-housing situations that we see. There's a couple examples of that. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to ever visit the establishment downtown, but that's a big house that has, I think, 19 rooms and shared bathroom and a big shared kitchen and that kind of thing. And I think that's one of the types of models. I think those folks are spending around $500 to $600 a month on rent. So it's affordable by design in that way. And that's something that I've been pushing with staff and also the development community to really consider that model so that we can address that housing insecurity. And in terms of food scarcity, that's another huge issue for folks here. So luckily we have our food bank, which I feel like does a really good job, and they do work here on your campus and on Cuesta's campus as well. But we also need to make sure that we're providing opportunities for folks, students and people in the community, because the lack of affordability isn't just around housing. We really need to do better on meaningful head of household jobs for people in our community.
Thank you.
Okay. These large projects that have been recently approved by this council and the previous one, there's over nearly 2,000 units in the pipeline ready to be built. And I think these projects really ought to be looked at as providing some of this alternative housing, like co-housing, like working with a cluster of tiny homes with support facilities. I think that could be a big part of the solution to affordability. I also believe housing for working people needs to be provided by these projects on smaller lots, perhaps smaller houses, but priced to sell for a reasonable price and have that source of housing be protected long-term for people who work in this community. Because if you're fortunate, as I've been, to be able to graduate from Cal Poly and stay in this community, you're going to be a working person and you're going to want to stay in a house that you can afford.
Thank you. Ms. Harmon, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
And I think the second aspect of this is for students is the conversation around housing on campus. And we know that the Cal Poly Master Plan calls for the vast majority of students to be on campus. And we need to make sure that students are really included in that discussion and in that process so that the housing is meaningful and affordable for students. This is something I hear from students all the time, that they don't want to live on campus, and one of the big reasons is the lack of affordability. So the administration needs to be clear that in getting more housing on campus, that it needs to be
Thank you, Ms.
meaningful,
Harmon. That is your
desirable,
time.
and affordable for students.
That is your time.
Okay, one of my platforms is to develop a stronger relationship with Cal Poly administration and to jointly sponsor a design competition with a financial reward to design a new neighborhood, essentially on the northwest side of this campus, that would have housing that students would want to live in, that would be near recreation, entertainment, and neighborhood support facilities, a place where students would want to live. And I believe the city needs to play a proactive role.
Thank you, Mr. Gurnee. That is your time. Excellent. Thank you both very much. We're going to move into our next question now. Given recent break-ins, burglaries, and sexual assault reports, amongst all other crimes, how can the city create a more safe environment for students?
Well, I think that the lighting that we've approved, the tripling of the lighting budget, is an aspect of that. And in addition to that, we also recognize that the lighting that did exist was at times covered by trees and things of that sort. So Public Works has been out there clearing the way to make sure that that lighting is as good as possible. But this is a constant concern and a consistent problem, and I have had many disturbing conversations with students on campus who have been sexually assaulted and have been frustrated by the Title IX process on campus and have not felt like they have received justice. And so those are conversations that I'm continuing to have with students, and also will be having with the administration to see how these students can get meaningful justice, and especially in cases where justice isn't served and students have to continue on in classrooms with their perpetrators, is obviously something that we should all be very deeply disturbed and concerned about. And so those are things that come to mind to continue to stand with students in that way. I think our police force does a great job. It is underfunded and needs more support. Policing has obviously taken a hit, and sometimes for good reason, but because of that, cities across the nation are having a hard time hiring and retaining police officers, and so we are understaffed in terms of our police department, like many cities across the United States. So that's another issue that needs to be consciously addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Gurnee.
What was the question again?
The question was, given recent break-ins, burglaries.
Okay, crime. Yes, the first quarter of this year witnessed an uptick of 180% in sexual assaults locally. Also, residential burglaries are off the charts. The city police department is 9 people short of a full complement of our police department. But thanks to the Me Too movement, women are reporting sexual assaults far more frequently today than they have been. And I'm hoping that we can fully populate our police department and really start battling this crime. They do a great job, but they need more support, and I'll be proud to give it to them.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Harmon.
This is one of the reasons I've partnered with RISE and Stand Strong in our community, 2 organizations that address both domestic intimate partner violence and sexual assault, and have participated in several different fundraisers and awareness events, and have been basically an ambassador for those 2 organizations, and will be speaking this Thursday at a domestic violence vigil on 6 o'clock, I think, on Thursday night in Mission Plaza. So this is also a big part of especially the sexual assault and domestic violence piece.
Thank you, Ms. Harmon. That is your time. Mr. Gurnee.
Yes, one other thing on crime. I really think the statistics on crime, the city police department has completed their 3rd quarter report. But I think these reports need to be made public in a newspaper so people can really understand what's happening in the community, because crime really has been increasing.
Thank you. So I know we talked about lighting throughout San Luis Obispo a little bit, but we're going to jump into that a little bit more. So on the topic of community safety, adequate lighting in neighborhoods is a concern for many students. Do you plan on addressing this issue, and how? If you would like to elaborate that on a little bit more.
I went first last time, I think.
Okay.
So, Mr. Gurnee.
Well, I think lighting up, particularly near campus, is a real crying need. And I think to the extent that the city has budgeted money to make those improvements need to be made instead of waiting around for them. Our neighborhoods, I live in the Anhole neighborhood on North Broad Street, and there's a crying need for lighting in that neighborhood as well. It's a crucial part of public safety to have street lighting on our streets, and that'll be a priority of my administration.
Thank you. Ms. Harmon.
Well, as I said, this is something that I've advocated for over and over again, but I am only one of 5 on a council, and so my vote is equal to the rest of my council members, and it was a challenge to get a lot of buy-in on increasing the budget on this issue. But your advocacy has made a huge difference, and so it's not just so much what I will be doing, because I have been and will continue to advocate, but it's really more of a question of what we will be doing together, because that makes a huge difference. Students showing up to advocate for your needs. You are a part of this community, and I'm a parent of college-age students. Safety is top of mind for me. I feel like that's a mayor's and any leader's number 1 task, is to protect the health and safety of our community. And so hopefully we can continue to partner together to push this forward, to have those conversations with the rest of the council members that will be on council in the coming years, to make it clear to them that this is an important issue. That's how this process works. That's how democracy works. You showing up and sharing your voice, and then folks like me making that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Gurnee.
I don't have anything more to add to that.
All right. Would you like to have a 30-second time to speak, Ms. Harmon?
Should I do a rebuttal to myself? I think what she said was amazing, and I'm all for it.
Excellent. Thank you both very much.
Very good.
Alrighty, we're going to go into our last question, and then we'll have a moment for a closing statement.
Great.
So our last question will be, what do you believe the city is spending too much money on, and what do you think the city is not spending enough money on?
Such a great question. Well, I think one of the things we're unfortunately forced to spend too much money on is our pension liabilities. This is a very somewhat complicated and at times boring but really important topic, and that's why fiscal responsibility is one of our major city goals. This is a combination of decisions that were made quite some time ago that have put us in an unfortunate situation of having to pay millions and millions of dollars every year in pensions, and unfunded liability is what it's called. So are we spending too much on that? Absolutely. Do we still have to? Absolutely. Cities all across the state and many across the nation are in the same boat. You will see cities going bankrupt in the coming years, in California in particular, but San Luis Obispo will not be one of them because we have a three-part plan to address that. And what are we not spending enough on? Well, lighting, it sounds like, for one thing. I mean, we have a real full-service city, so there's a lot of funding for a lot of projects, but there's always unmet need. You know, we need a new police station, we need lighting, we need police officers. The list is somewhat endless. So it's, you know, in terms of the context for the students, lighting is definitely something that we're not spending enough money on.
Thank you. Mr. Gurnee?
Yes, I'd say probably the top priority that I think is misplaced is spending $3 million on a bike lane through a historic residential neighborhood and eliminating 56 on-street parking spaces in my neighborhood, when we should be putting that money into completing the rail trail for bicycle safety and bicycle infrastructure. Also, we've been neglecting Laguna Lake. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Laguna Lake, but it's totally silted in with silt coming out of Perfumo Canyon for the last 50 years, and it doesn't have the storage capacity for flooding events. Having been on the city council in 1973 when we had a disastrous flood, the city engineer almost had to dynamite the culvert underneath Madonna Road to release the water to prevent it from flooding the entire neighborhood. Thankfully, the storm abated just in time. But that is something that's been neglected, and it needs to happen, and happen soon.
Thank you. Ms. Harmon?
I'm sorry, this is the rebuttal to?
Yes, this is the 30-second rebuttal.
Right,
to the very
okay,
last
thank you,
question.
thank you.
Yes.
So the vast majority of that $3 million that he mentioned are actually going to pedestrian improvements in that neighborhood. And again, we've really felt like a protected bike path to get people from the downtown into the student areas of Cal Poly and the elementary schools was key. And in terms of Laguna Lake, we decided that spending $15 million on a major dredge project was not in alignment with our fiscal responsibility, but we are committed to spending at least $250,000 a year in the coming years consistently to make sure that that project does happen slower than people
Thank you, Ms.
want.
Harmon. That is your time.
But nevertheless, it'll happen.
Yeah, so regarding Laguna Lake, I've talked with a contractor about a new way of approaching that project that would save. It would only cost about $3 to $4 million, not $15 million to dredge Laguna Lake. But why spend money ramming bike lanes through neighborhoods when the arterial streets that frame our neighborhoods are the ones that really need attention? That is where Kennedy Love was killed, was on Foothill Boulevard, not in our neighborhood. And I think the priorities for the expenditures on bicycle paths is just all wrong.
Thank you both very much. I'd like to go into the 30-second closing that you all would like to offer, starting with Mr. Gurnee.
Sure. Well, 19 days from now is going to be Election Day, November 6th. I don't know how many of you are registered to vote, but you still can. I hope I can count on your support, because I'll be supporting you when I get into the office of Mayor of San Luis Obispo. Thank you for taking your time to be here and listen to us. And good luck and good voting.
Thank you, Mr. Gurnee. Ms. Harmon.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed working with many of you over the last several years, and I'm grateful to have the endorsement of the Cal Poly Democratic Club and many others in our community. I want to invite everyone tonight. We're having a fun event at the Pad, the climbing gym. That is a voter registration event that'll have a DJ and food and snacks, and we're also doing a 24-hour Voter Reg Marathon at Slowdoco. It starts Friday at noon and it'll be going for the 24 hours after that. So we're making democracy fun again, I hope. And thank you so much for being a part of it. My website is HeidiHarmon.org. You can get more info and contact me
Thank
there.
you, Ms. Harmon. That's your time. All righty. That concludes. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for attending.
Just a reminder, Mustang News will be hosting its own mayoral debate on October 30th from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., also in the University Union. For Mustang News, I'm Connor McCarthy. Have a great day.